We face an extraordinary time in global labour markets. Meta trends of inclusion, staff shortages, supply chain issues, not to mention conflagrations in Eastern Europe, inflation. You can go down the list, and still post-COVID restrictions, the world is an extraordinary place. The labour markets and the recruitment industry are inextricably tied, and leaders within recruitment have never been under so much pressure to really lead from the front and add value to clients and candidates. This is a series of interviews with people who are leading in specialist areas around the recruitment market. And my role as city editor at Recruitment International for 15 years and involved in the industry for the last 20 years has given me the privilege of meeting people, thousands of hours with hundreds of leaders. And I'm privileged today to welcome Fred Ewing, who's the head of transport and infrastructure at Meridian Business Support. So welcome, Fred, and thanks for taking part in this leadership series.
Thank you.
Now, I know at the moment your role there obviously is very high profile. You advise governments, including the UK transport planning, etc. But I just want to step back a little bit in terms of the recruitment sector. You studied philosophy at York, but I think it's, if I'm correct, this summer will be 20 years, hate to remind you, since you joined the recruitment industry. I think you've been with Meridian for about 15 or 16 of those. So tremendous longevity. Just wanted to get a feel for what brought you into the recruitment sector and what's happened over that 20-year career.
I started working in recruitment as a philosophy graduate, actually. So in my summer holidays, I was working in a kind of high volume, blue collar environment, sourcing joiners and electricians. And so when I left university with a degree, a philosophy degree at that, it wasn't entirely certain which direction my career was going to go in, but recruitment was something I always knew and grown up with. My family were involved in it as well. So I moved into recruitment, focusing on IT, focused recruitment, so software engineering and software development, which moved me gradually into a certain area, which was transport, whereby technology and modeling and simulation of transport networks is a major software-led piece. So when we noticed that software behind policy around transport was such a big area, but also so massively underskilled, it created an opportunity in itself, and it grew from there, and it grew across the UK, and then gradually more than that. So globally, working across Australia, New Zealand, America, Canada, Middle East, and it's gone from there.
No, thank you for that. Now, I've been involved in the recruitment sector for 2 decades and with listed privately held businesses, and I confess I put my hands up. Not an area that I know a lot about. So it'd be really interesting because it's really a specialist field, and you're working with global consultancies, you're advising governments, and transport. I think it's covering modeling, economics, transport planning. Can you unpack that a little bit for those of us who don't really understand the nuances of this sector? I mean, infrastructure is hugely important, massive investments going on around the globe, new smart cities. I think most people know that. But just to get your flavor as a high level, what's involved in terms of who you place and your area of expertise, because it's very fascinating having spoken to you over the last few months.
Yeah, you can go on about this for a very long time, and suppose you could bore people with it a bit too much. But the best way to describe it would be to look at a scheme that everyone's aware of. And so obviously right now you've got the Elizabethan line in London, which is just about to open on Monday. We can start using that. That project has been a long time in the making. All the pieces that we as the users see is around the building of that, the disruption that that causes, but also the benefits to which that will provide to business, consumers, travellers, tourists, the whole piece. You get to see that bit. That's the bit that's external. What people don't see and what people don't understand is that there's an enormous amount of work that goes through the policy around getting such a scheme off the ground. That starts with an agenda, really. It starts with why do we need Crossrail? Why do we need that piece of infrastructure to happen? What does it do to benefit society? Once that's been put through government, and it can be either local authority, local government, or central government, depending on how big that scheme is, it has to go through a huge amount of planning, economic business case modeling, the simulation, the planning and design of that structure. And there's enormous amounts of people. As you can imagine, the stakeholders involved in buildings such as there's a huge amount of work done behind the scenes to get a project like that off the ground. And okay, these things do get delayed, but realistically, anything that you see regarding the transport network on which you all travel on, there is a huge amount of skill and expertise globally focused on delivering those programs. And some of these projects are 30, 50 years ahead of us. Some of the programs that we're working on at the moment and my clients are working on, we won't even see them. We won't see them being built because it's that far ahead. So we are focusing around how we live and work and operate in a city environment where transport is a key component of that.
No, thank you. That's a really clear explanation. I think, as you say, we as the users, if you like, see all of these infrastructural projects come live. But I mean, you're placing economic modelers, economists, people who are specialists in design and advocacy, all the way through from, I guess, just concept to then inception and execution. So and you're doing that globally. Thank you for that. I wanted just to dig slightly deeper because I think all of us know that where we live, how we now live in the post-COVID, if I can call it a post-COVID world, is now profoundly going to impact your practice as well. Are there a couple of perhaps key things that you're seeing your clients and your work focusing on? I'm not an expert, but I think issues of mobility and obviously delivering net zero in amongst all of this must be quite high on the agenda in terms of the work that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think COVID really focused everyone's minds on how we live and how we live within the places of which we choose to live. So everyone will have seen on the news that this working from home has changed the way in which cities operate and how companies should be focusing their own working practices around that idea. So COVID has pushed the agenda perhaps more to the fore, along with the climate change debate, of which there is no debate. Climate change is a thing, and wider, our entire cities, energy infrastructure, utilities, but transport being a key component of it, has to refocus itself on the net zero decarbonisation agenda. So, as we will all see in the news, and what's interesting is that this is becoming more and more newsworthy. Actually, it's centering right of the fact that we're going to all be moving towards an electrical vehicle. So EV charging points. How far do these cars get to A to B, first and last mile? The idea of a 20-minute city where you can get anywhere you wish to get to without the use of a car. Walking, cycling, active travel. You can get to the gym, the shops, school, your place of work without having to travel, huge lengths of time. All of that is absolutely critical to ensure that the climate change issues that we're dealing with are dealt with. And we specifically are working with it from a mobility point of view.
No, thank you for that. And it's an exciting time, clearly, with all of these at the top of the political agenda, the media. But in terms of, I know that you're expanding in terms of you're renowned in these industries globally, and your practice is now, of course, dealing with clients on a global scale. For those bringing back to the staffing and recruitment sector, for people who are perhaps thinking about a career change or a pathway into a more specialised area, just want to talk you through about what the opportunities are with your practice and what they can expect. It sounds like they would be, in a sense, quite privileged to be at the centre of really transforming the way we live.
Yes, so it is an interesting area because it's so niche, but there's also so many different moving parts to it. So the overarching part of that is transport and mobility and places and cities and how we're living in those. But we are involved at a very intricate level with public sector and private sector consultancies, being able to advise them as to what others are doing. So it might be that, we've come off a call this morning with a client in Melbourne who are interested to know where they are as a city with regards to their climate change programs and what people are doing in, say, London or Manchester or Toronto or Vancouver, and whether is everyone on the same page. And in so being able to advise at that kind of level, then what you can do is begin to understand at a really granular level what skills they need to be able to get them from being where they are right now to where they need to be. And that might be, if it's the private sector, the skills they need to be able to influence their clients, who will be the public sector, or if it's public sector, understanding the skills that they need to be able to ensure that their city or their domain is doing the right thing, not just by the climate change agenda itself, but obviously all cities are competing is the wrong word, but they want to make themselves the place to be. They want to make sure that we wish to be a part of that city. And so what can they do to get there, and what skills do they need to have in to be able to get to that point, if that makes sense?
No, it does make sense. And anyone who's obviously involved in the whole gamut of transport and modelling and economics, transport planning, whether they want to perhaps join your team as a colleague, I know that you're expanding, or they work in this sector, where's the best place for them to contact you? I know you're very active with a significant following and highly respected. LinkedIn, I would imagine, is the best platform.
Yeah, LinkedIn is always going to be the place to go. I suppose recruitment is driven by LinkedIn now. It's changed the way in which quite a large number of us work. So if anyone's getting in touch with us, LinkedIn, you'll be always finding me on there. I think most people probably tired of seeing me on there, to be quite honest.
I'm sure that's not the case. Thank you very much for your time. As I said, this is part of our leadership series, looking at leaders within the recruitment space that are really driving change and actually responding to change in the macro environment by bringing the talent that's required, and of course helping people with their visions, whether they're governments, whether they're private sector consultancies. So a real pleasure to speak to you, and thank you for illuminating us on this niche sector. Thank you very much indeed.
No, thank you very much.